Here's a fun game. Think about the last time you went to the dentist, dropped your dog off at the vet, or called an ambulance. Now ask yourself who actually owns that business, because there's a good chance the answer isn't a friendly local dentist named Dr. Steve. It's a private equity firm in New York that also owns 400 other dentists, 3 ambulance companies, and a chain of daycare centres, all stitched together into something called a platform. And no, that's not a conspiracy theory, that's just Tuesday in corporate America. Let's start with the basic mechanics, because private equity sounds boring on purpose. That's the whole trick. If it sounded exciting, people would ask questions. Here's how it actually works. A PE firm raises a pool of money from pension funds, endowments, and rich people who don't want to talk about their investments at dinner parties. Then they use that money, plus a mountain of borrowed debt, to buy a company. Not with their own cash, with debt. The company itself now has to pay back. It's like buying a house with someone else's credit card and then handing them the bill. Once they own the business, the playbook is almost identical every time. Cut costs, raise prices, load the company with debt extract, special dividends for themselves, and then 3 to 7 years later sell the whole thing to another private equity firm or dump it on the public markets. The goal was never to build a great dental practice or a great daycare centre. The goal was to squeeze it like a lemon and flip it before anyone notices the juice is gone. And here's where the binary comes in, because this is the part nobody explains what you think you're buying versus who's actually setting the price. You think you're paying your local vet for a checkup. You're actually paying a debt payment on a leveraged buyout that happened 2 ownership changes ago. You think your kid's daycare tuition went up because of inflation. It went up because the daycare chain needs to hit an EBITDA target before its next sale. Let's talk numbers, because this isn't some fringe issue anymore. Private equity firms have gone from owning a handful of niche businesses to controlling entire sectors of everyday life. They own roughly a third of emergency room staffing companies in some markets. They own thousands of dental practices under names that still sound local, like Bright Smiles Family Dentistry, even though the actual decisions are being made by a spreadsheet in a Manhattan office. They own veterinary chains, hospice care companies, and mobile home parks. Mobile home parks, let that sink in. The literal cheapest form of housing in America has become a favourite private equity target because residents own their homes but rent the land, which means they can't just pack up and leave when rent triples. This is where the emergency room example gets uncomfortable. Fast studies looking at PE-owned ER staffing groups found something disturbing after private equity took over. Out-of-network billing and surprise medical bills spiked. Translation: you get rushed to the ER unconscious, having a heart attack with zero ability to shop around for the in-network doctor. And that's exactly the kind of captive customer private equity loves. You can't say no, you can't negotiate, you just pay. And it's not just healthcare housing tells the same story with a different mask on institutional buyers. Many backed by private equity started scooping up single-family homes at scale after 2008, when regular families were underwater and desperate to sell. Fast forward to today, and in some zip codes, a meaningful share of homes for sale are being bought not by families but by investment funds, treating housing like a commodity, not a place. People live. Rents in those markets don't move based on your landlord's mood. They move based on algorithmic pricing software designed to maximize returns across an entire portfolio, whether or not any individual tenant can afford it. So why does this keep happening, and why does it keep getting worse? Because the incentive structure is almost perfectly designed to reward this behavior. Private equity firms get paid management fees regardless of performance, plus a cut of the profits when they sell debt is cheap to raise, and the company being acquired is the one stuck holding it, not the fund. If the business thrives, the PE firm wins big. If the business collapses under debt, the PE firm has often already extracted its dividends and fees and walks away relatively unscathed. Meanwhile, the workers get laid off, the debt holders get stiffed, and the customers get worse service at higher prices. It's a heads I win, tails you lose system, and it's completely legal. Toys R Us is the textbook example everyone points to, and for good reason. A healthy, profitable toy retailer got loaded with billions in acquisition debt it never asked for. Employees got laid off with barely any severance, while the firms that engineered the deal walked away with hundreds of millions in fees. The company didn't fail because kids stopped wanting toys. It failed because it was structurally set up to fail from the moment the deal closed. Here's the uncomfortable twist, though. This isn't some evil villain plot happening in a smoke-filled room. Private equity exists because pension funds, the ones paying out retirement checks to teachers and firefighters, need higher returns than bonds can offer. So in a strange circular way, the same economic pressure squeezing your dentist's prices might also be propping up someone's retirement fund. Everyone's chasing yield, and somewhere along the chain, someone has to actually generate that yield from real businesses, real workers, and real customers. That's you. So what do you actually do with this information? Realistically, you can't always avoid it. Private equity ownership isn't always disclosed on the sign out front, but you can start noticing the signs. A local business that suddenly has a corporate-sounding parent name buried in the fine print A, once friendly service that suddenly nickel and dimes you for everything, a chain that expanded suspiciously fast right before service quality tanked. These are the fingerprints of a leveraged buyout playing out in real time. The bigger point here isn't to make you paranoid every time you visit the dentist. It's to understand that a huge invisible layer of the economy is optimized, not around serving you better, but around extracting value before an exit. And once you see that structure, you start noticing it everywhere: healthcare, housing, daycare, even your local car wash chain. It's not a conspiracy, it's just financial engineering with really good PR. And that's the real story behind the businesses. You think, they didn't get worse by accident. They got worse on purpose because somewhere a spreadsheet decided that was the most profitable version of worse they could get away with.